morning, good afternoon, or shall I say good day to everyone across the world. My name is Wale Croft. If you've never heard of us before, and I hope you have, we are Rescue Nigeria. We are set up under the aegis of Initiative for Good and Informed Citizen. So we are not affiliated with any political party. We have no association with anyone. All we care about is what is best for our country and our people. Why Rescue Nigeria? We thought about the fact that we need to bring educated and informed Nigerians together, and we need to start looking at people amongst us, not the usual people who can serve as leaders for the rest of the society, people who can join hands with us to work towards making our citizens self-aware and be informed citizens and take on the responsibility of demanding the best function in society, and then to generate the power of the people, because that is really strong. I think we need to understand, we want our people to understand our strength and be motivated by that strength and to believe in the best of Nigeria. We are diehard enthusiasts and optimistic people. And so we want like-minded people to join us. And that's why we are asking for people to volunteer. We have different areas in terms of communication, in terms of PR, in terms of education, in terms of health, different areas that we need people to come forward and be part of this movement. And the qualifications, as you can see on there, is you must be frustrated with the issues that we face right now and have the desire to change, the willingness to lead, and you have the passion for organizing the community, starting from your own families, your friends, your networks, everybody that you're connected with, that you can galvanize them, you can encourage them to be part of this movement. And what's the next step for you? Please go to all of our social media handles. You will find us on Facebook. You'll find us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. And you can go to our website and find out a bit more about our organization. But for today, we want to encourage you to please engage with us and be part of this movement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wale Croft. Without much ado, we'll get started. And we have a very interesting topic today, which is a little bit of a deviation from the way we usually approached our topics. For those who have been, participating in a lot of this People's Parliament, you would know that we have been looking more at the strategy, what makes Nigeria better, what kind of attitude do we need, what kind of people do we need, what are the challenges, how do we tackle it? That's what we've been doing for quite a while. This time around, we feel like there is a need for us to tackle an issue which really comes home for a lot of people and a lot of families. The leadership of Rescue Nigeria was in a discussion a while ago, and we began to talk about the drug problem in Nigeria. And the more we talked about it, the more we realized we needed to do something about it. The first thing we noticed was that a lot of millions of young people in Nigeria have one form of issue with drugs or the other. And people are not talking well enough about this. Why are they not talking about it? We asked ourselves. And then we realized it's because of the social stigma. Nobody wants to accept that someone in their family, a friend, a child, is on drugs. And the more we hide it, the worse it gets. And we began to think, and through our discussion, we also realized that there are a lot of big people in the society who actually are involved in this. And we were creating a nation in which millions of youths, millions of young people, their future may just be cut short because of the influence of friends, because of the influence of the role models that they have, whether it's the musicians or the artists or whatever it could be. And we felt it is time to do something about it. So this is phase one. Talking about it is phase one. In this organization, we don't believe that just talking is enough. We are going to start some campaign. We hope that a lot of people will join with us, but we know that no problem is solved without people first talking about it. And today, to talk about it, we have assembled a number of people, experts, people who have more information than the ordinary person. And here with us today, I will do some introductions. First is Dr. Charles Umeh. Dr. Umeh is a consultant clinical psychologist at the University Teaching Hospital in Idi-Araba. He is also a senior lecturer at the Department of Psychiatry, College of Medicine, University of Lagos. He is also the chairman of the Nigerian Association of Clinical Psychologists, Lagos State Chapter. We are honored to have you here today, Dr. Umeh. We also have here with us today Mr. Femi Babafemi. Mr. Babafemi was appointed by the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, as the Director of Media and Advocacy in 2021. Until that appointment, Mr. Babafemi was the editor of Saturday Sun. We also have with us Dr. Gbenga Shadare, who is a lecturer at the Buckinghamshire New University in the UK. He has worked as a researcher with the Center for Social Protection and Policy Studies and the Coalition for Climate Change. Prior to this, he had worked in industry for over 3 decades. Last but not the least, we have Mr. David Folaranmi. Mr. Folaranmi is a qualified economist, a psychologist, a public speaker, a writer, and certified counselor with specialty in addiction and substance abuse recovery. Mr. Folaranmi has also been featured in several drug abuse campaigns and documentaries. In fact, he was invited to the presidential villa in Abuja on the occasion of the United Nations International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking, where he shared his experience on drug abuse, his recovery journey, and the work that he is doing now. Mr. David Folaranmi, thank you very much for joining us. We are very glad that you could make it here today. Let's begin by asking some questions so that we can enrich ourselves about what's going on. And this first question is for Mr. Folaranmi. How serious is the problem of drug abuse among Nigerian youths? Who is hooked on what kinds of drugs? In which states, in which regions, in which zones, or in which demographics? Which ones are the most impacted? Help us understand how serious this problem is.
Thank you very much for that question. I'll start by saying, yes, we do have a drug issue in the country, but I usually don't like to create fear or panic in the minds of people to make it seem like it has been called in some quarters a full-blown pandemic. According to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime Drug Survey of 2018, we have a 14.4 prevalence of drug use among the ages of 15 to 60. This brings into cognizance all substances excluding alcohol, because of course, if we add alcohol, which is considered a drug, that percentage is going to be a lot higher. In the north, we have a lot of opioid use. In the southwest, we have a lot of marijuana use, and then in the middle belt, we have a lot of alcohol intake. It used to be, when it comes to, we talked about demography, it used to be 1 in 4 drug users that are ladies, but that has increased because a lot of people used to think, this is it's a guy's problem, it's something that's only peculiar to the men. But then now we have it's a lot closer. It's a lot deeper now. A lot more ladies have been found to be using substances, including marijuana. And in the state in the state of Enugu, we have a lot of ladies who now use crystal methamphetamine, which is locally known as Purumi. So yes, we do have quite a problem on our hands, but thankfully we have organizations like the NDLEA doing an excellent job in curbing the spread and the fast spread of drug use among the youth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Folaranmi. And I would segue quickly to Mr. Babafemi on this, because Mr. Folaranmi said NDLEA is doing a lot of work. From this perspective of the agency, how serious is this problem and how prepared is Nigeria to deal with it? Mr. Babafemi.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Just like David had already laid a very solid foundation and painting a very grim picture of what the drug situation is like in our country today, even though the only official statistics that we have at the moment remains the 2018 National Drug Survey, which gives us a figure of 14.3 million Nigerians between ages 15 and 64, representing 14.4%, which at that level, it's almost 3 times the global prevalence average. But beyond that, beyond those statistics, because that's we're talking of about 5 years ago now, we're actually due for another survey to actually assess the current situation of things. But then when we look at what the agency has been doing to curb access to these illicit substances and also raise public awareness, we appreciate the fact that in the area of drug supply reduction, where arrests are made, drugs are seized, offenders are prosecuted, and a lot of them convicted and jailed just to serve as deterrence. I'll tell you that the figures have also confirmed that indeed we have a very deadly scourge to deal with, especially among our youth. When you look at in the last 33 months alone, I'll tell you that the agency has arrested more than 37,000 offenders. And when you look at that's huge for that period of time. And when you also look at the volume of drugs, illicit drugs seized within this same period, we're also looking at over almost 7 million kilograms, which is about 7,000 tons at the moment. So that shows you that indeed we have quite a problem on our hands. And but the good thing, like David said, indeed, in the area of drug supply reduction, the agency has actually gone all out to ensure that we cut access to and availability of these illicit substances. And that is why wherever they are, whether in the forest, on the streets, wherever we find them, we make sure that we arrest those dealing in all of this and also prosecute them. And I also tell you that within this same period, we've had more than 7,000 persons successfully prosecuted and convicted with billions worth of assets seized from them, while we still have more than 11,000 of such cases also still going on in the courts. But going beyond the arrest and seizure, the drug supply reduction, we also have a major pillar, which is the drug demand reduction, where We have to get involved in advocacy to raise awareness, to prevent people. That is the prevention. And when we get people already involved, already abusing these illicit substances, we have also tried to create platforms and mechanisms where we get them help as the first responders. And where we get them help treated, we also get involved at the level of getting them reintegrated back to the society. That's all of those layers. I can also give you figures of those that have been treated in the last, and within the same period, we've had more than 26,000.
Mr. Babafemi, I have to cut you there because there is going to be a section towards the end where we actually talk about the solution. Let's continue to explore the problem itself so that people can really understand what's going on. I believe in our society, a lot of people still have not come to grasp with how serious the problem is. But one thing you said, Mr. Babafemi, was that we have a deadly scourge on our hands. And I'll quickly pivot back to Mr. Folaranmi. We know that young people all over the world always try new things, even though the trend is worrisome. It's Nigerian youths are not doing things that the youths in other nations have not done. But what are the major drivers of drug abuse in Nigeria among our young people? How did we get here? Mr. Folaranmi.
Okay. Thank you very much. Personally, I like to think that the first major driver or cause will be the family unit. You know, when there's a disconnect from the family, and then parenting, intentional parenting is missing out, then you find out that it's very easy for the youth to get involved with this drug use. Several times I've visited homes and I can see the telltale signs of drug use right within the homes, and the parents are none the wiser. So it actually does start from there. Number two, we talk about the schools, the schooling system. How much is our institutions from secondary school level to university level doing to make their citadels of learning drug proof? You know, I went to speak in a school recently in Lagos, and then the taxi man that was taking me there, it was an Uber. He said to me, "Oga, now this school where they take banana, they go, it's secondary school. Now, this school, they pay in millions. So are you telling me that the school, a taxi man knows that the students of that school use drugs, and yet the management of the school is doing nothing about it?" Now, after my talk in that school, a young girl came out to me to speak to me. She said, "Sir, I need to speak to you." I said, "What's the problem?" She said, "Sir, I have been using drugs. I started using drugs 2 years ago." Now, mind you, when I saw her, I assumed she was about 16, you know, from how she looked. She said, "Sir, I've been using drugs. I started drinking Menace 2 years ago, and then it progressed to marijuana." She said, "Sir, now I'm using cocaine. And right now, I can't study without using cocaine at secondary school." So I asked her, I summoned the courage to ask her how old she is. She told me she's 11, which meant that 2 years ago, when she was 9, this happened in June this year. 2 years ago, when she was 9, she started drinking Hennessy. Within the space of 2 years, she started using marijuana and now cocaine, so much so that she even needs it to study hard. So you see, that's another problem. How much are our schools doing to prevent drug use among the youth? So I think that's another driver. Then also we talk about the community. You know, I always talk about community-based interventions. We have come to a stage where we see things happening that are wrong, and then we feel that, okay, it's not happening to my own family. So somebody around the corner, you know, is selling tramadol. Maybe he has a malam that has a shop. So under the guise of having a kiosk, he's selling tramadol to young people. You're watching these things happen, and then you just keep quiet. So you're creating an enabling environment for drug use to thrive. You know, so we need to do more as a community. There are places where are dark spots. There are no lights there. You know that these are black spots where drugs are sold. As a community, you can come together to put light in that place, to expel those people who are doing those things. We'll talk about the media again. The media glorification of drug use is something that needs to be looked into. Once again, thank you very much to the NDLEA for putting a stop to things like nitrous, the laughing gas thing that was becoming so popular, and then everywhere on the media, it made it look cool. whereas this was something that was destroying our youth at a very alarming rate. So the media glorification of drugs is also very important. And then finally, we can't talk about the driving factors of drug use without talking about certain pre-existing or predisposing factors. These are factors beyond the control of the youth or the individual who is struggling with drugs that made him or her susceptible to using drugs. An example would be mental health illness. This month is the mental health illness month, and we talked a lot about the bidirectional relationship between drug use and mental health illnesses. So sometimes the person might be struggling with a mental health illness, which is no fault of his or her, but that makes that person susceptible to start abusing substances. Another predisposing factor that can make a person struggle with drug use, a lot of people might not know this, but it's a genetic factor. So we've seen in several occasions where drug use or drug addiction is passed from one generation down to another, just because of the psychological buildup of the individual and what he has inherited in his or her genes. It makes that person susceptible to using drugs. So there are several other pre-existing factors that can serve as driving factors that might make our youth get involved with drug use. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's really very exhaustive. And what I learned from that is that there are certain factors that are within the control of the youths. There are some factors that are within the control of the community. And there are some factors that are not even within the control of the person, like genetic factors, for instance. I'll go now to Dr. Shadare. Take us through from the social or sociological standpoint. What are the kinds of situations you face in a country like Nigeria with our culture? Initially, I talked about the stigma attached to this issue. How is that a contributing factor to the worsening of this problem?
Okay, first of all, beyond the issue of stigma, I think we need to go back to the family. The family unit is very crucial in a society, and once there is a breakdown in the family unit, once we've got dysfunction, a lot of other things will go wrong. But having said that, that doesn't necessarily mean that anybody that comes from a dysfunctional family is doomed to a life of failure and ignominy. So that's the one thing. But I think what we need to bear in mind, first and foremost, are those structures, the structural barriers within our society that facilitate and allow the reproduction of dangerous behaviors like drug addiction and dependence. Those are the things we need to really focus on. And one of my favorite authors, Paul Farmer, talked about pathologies of power or pathologies of society. And part of the problem we have in Nigeria over the years has been the destruction, the diminution of our state institution, of which the family is one of them. So people don't have trust in government. There is, low moral, there is moral decay across all sectors. Even our institutions, religious institutions, haven't helped. To go back to your question, the issue of drug abuse has been part of our society for a pretty long time, really. I mean, when we remember, we've been talking about, as when I was in primary school, I've been hearing drug abuse. I mean, then of course, when we're all in secondary school, Fela and all these other people, cannabis usage was quite, pervasive in our society. So we will have drug problems. And like one of my favorite authors said, there's no society that can claim complete innocence from the scourge of drug problem. The problem is actually that those people who become addicted to drug, and which is the problem. Some people experiment with drug recreationally. Some people experiment with drug when they were young, through peer pressure, and even people who go on to become president in many societies, they have experimented with drug. The problem is people who can move away from it. People's lives are ruined as a result of drug. And I think the persistence of why a lot of people move about in this cycle is because of the absence of strong institutions that we have in our society, which allows the perpetuation and the reproduction and gives permission to those who make these drugs. So if we really want to start about it, we need to look at it from a broader view. One, drug is a business. The drug economy and its infrastructure, its architecture in Nigeria has to be demolished. People are profiting of the misery. People are profiting of the misfortune of very vulnerable people in our society. And that is actually part of the problem. So there's no way we're going to try to address or talk about the solution. And we are not going to look at the idea that some people have actually profited from it because, I mean, you could say there could be a lot of conspiracy. People have given me a lot of conspiracy theories about Chinese coming to Nigeria to destroy our people and all kinds of, conspiracy theories have been floated around. But the question is, whether you believe in the conspiracy stories, which I don't believe in, it's the drug industry itself is huge, and those who are profiting from it are part of the problem. And unless we have a system by which we can apprehend and bring those people to book, it will take a while before we can address this issue. So I'm going to stop here and just because I know they're not going to questions there. So
thank you very much, Dr. Shadare. Drug, you said, is a business. And I think that's one thing that we all need to realize. Some people are making billions of naira from this business. Some people don't take it as destroying lives. They just take it as a means of livelihood. Dr. Umeh, I want to check with you. Oh, great.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. So okay, I'll go back to the question that I posed to you before now. I asked you to take us through the journey. What is the process of getting hooked? How does a young girl or boy, young man or woman transition from innocence to drug addiction?
Oh, that's a good one. I think that is the core of the problems of drugs. Now, when we talk about drugs, we are looking at any substance when ingested is capable of influencing the way we think, the way we act, and the way we behave. And some of these drugs, in quotes, are prescription drugs. And the journey begins with use, whether prescribed or not, for recreation. Now, the first thing that gets people hooked is the effect these drugs exert. And that is what appeals to them, including some prescription drugs. They give people a kind of euphoria, a well-being that they want to experience more and more again. Now, when they take that first dose of that drug, the next thing is they want to look for it the next time. And that's where we start talking about misuse, including prescription drugs. Maybe they gave you, like people that have HBSS, when they go into pain crisis, pentazocine is prescribed to calm their pain. Now, they discover the euphoria that comes with it. Now, even when they're not having any crisis, they start seeking out for that drug so that they get that euphoria. That's what we call misuse. And when they start misusing these substances, using it for reasons why they are not needed, and they're using it now for euphoria, they start craving for it. And that is the beginning of abuse of this drug, because they'll start spending more time sourcing for this drug than they need. And when they start abusing this drug, the next thing that comes with it is what we call tolerance. The body begins to tolerate these substances. That simply means for them to get the feeling they got with one shot or one dose the first time, they'll need more of it. And to explain it in simple terms, what usually happens is, if you have never used alcohol before, the first time you take a glass of alcohol, you're going to feel tipsy. That is simply because the body has a way of breaking down foreign substances. So the body secretes enzymes that will break them down. Now, because it hasn't got any record of the substances that are breaking down, the body absorbs more, and the effects of these drugs are felt more. And that's why it gives you tipsy with just a glass. But that first attempt has made the body to produce those enzymes. When next you take it, they are broken down. So that one glass cannot produce the effect it produced the last time. You need to take in more. And the more you take it, and the more you get the effect. And that is the beginning of dependence. And this dependence can come in two ways, what we call psychological dependence and physiological dependence. In psychological dependence, based on the effect the drug gives you, you begin to feel that you can't function without the drug in your system. And that's what we call psychological dependence. Not all drugs can do that, though. We classify them based on some of these effects they can do. And one drug that can cause psychological dependence is cannabis, the one we all know as weed. Okay? Now, we have another category that can actually incorporate its active ingredients into the body functioning, so that when they are not in the system, the body begins to function abnormally. And those abnormal functioning of the body, because those substances are not there, is what leads to what we call withdrawal syndrome. And this withdrawal syndrome are felt based on the category of substance you are using. For instance, we know the stimulants like amphetamine and cocaine, okay? They usually make you feel high and very energetic. And once they are not in the system, they tend to slow your system down and you start fidgeting and becoming restless. But the other categories like opium, once they're not in the system, you start having things like running nose, start becoming anxious, okay? And these are because their active ingredients have been incorporated into the system. So if they're not there, they make you feel that you are not okay and the body will begin to malfunction. So because of that, you need to look for it anyhow, anywhere. And that is exactly what happens. And that leads to what we call dependence and what people generally call addiction. That means the person is now addicted to it. And one important thing about this addiction is that some of these drugs have very short half-life, the period in which they leave the system. And once they leave the system, you start craving for it. You need more to function because they are now part of you. And that is the danger. So invariably, what we are advocating for is understanding what the categories of psychiatric substances are and avoiding them like a plague. Because once you start using, they begin to control you. You can't control them anymore. That is the danger. Let me stop here.
Yes, you said we need to understand these drugs and start avoiding them like a plague. That is very instructional. The next question is also for you, Dr. Umeh.
Yeah.
Are there early warning signals that are indicative of progression towards drug abuse that parents and guardians could watch out for?
Beautiful.
Early
That's
detection.
a good one. There are. Let's start with adolescent, because a lot of people avoided this category of people thinking that they're so innocent. But unfortunately, this is where the beginning of drug use comes from. Okay? And adolescent comes with a lot of distress, what we call stress and stuff. And most parents don't understand them because of their egocentrism. Now, there are warning signs. Once you're a little boy who is calm, who is quite unassuming before now start using drugs, he start becoming very secretive. He start dissociating himself with family issues. He start bonding, bringing in friends outside. And these friends, you never get to know them, no matter how hard you try, because you don't understand their language anymore. That is a sign that something is on. Another one is they start showing what we call temper outbursts. Some of these temper outbursts happen when they don't have the drug in the system. And probably you have given them a task and they are craving already. They start getting angry. And some of them will start stealing, especially when you deprive them of the fund. Things will start missing in your house. And these are things that were not happening before. Then know that something is what? On. Okay? Then a lot of them might begin to have sleepless nights. Some of them might begin to eat voraciously. And some of these effects are brought by different types of drug. So not all of them will happen in this way. For instance, drugs like opium and opium derivatives might begin to show in the person's pupils. Cannabis will show also in the lips and the pupils as well. Cannabis comes with the dilation of the pupils. Opium comes with the constriction of the pupils. Now, the darkening of the lips and other things are signs. And you also begin to notice for those ones that inject heroin and other injectables, like pentazocine, you start seeing what? Needle mark on their body. And some will start having a catarrh that never heals. These are signs with opium. You start having constant catarrh, okay? And their behavior start becoming totally different from what you know them to be. They start showing, some of them will start, some naive kids will start becoming unnecessarily bold. Now, let's go to academic performance. They begin to deteriorate because they are now spending more time hanging out than doing their studies. And if they are using cannabis, cannabis makes them to be demotivated. They don't get to do anything. They keep procrastinating, thinking that the time is going to stand still for them. And some of them, you see them only reading during exam, because when they smoke, they think they can read to the brain because they have the energy to do that. But one side effect of cannabis is that it gives people what we call heightened perception. You think you are reading and understanding, but you are not processing those information. So that when you get into the example, it's called that they are porous. Okay, so these are some of the things that some of these drugs can do, and people could watch out at the early stages. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we said at the outset that at the People's Parliament, we want people to go away with more information. And I think Dr. Umeh has loaded us up with so much information. If you have family, if you have kids, if you have nieces, nephews, you have cousins, begin to watch out for all these signs. These are really very, very important. We would make a quick segue into bringing people in to participate. At this point, does anyone have a point they'd like to raise, a question they have, a comment they have? I see, I'm going to read through some of the things that I see here in the chat window. Dr. Olubumi Adonri, you said, good job working on reducing drug supply. I think you are responding to Mr. Babafemi of the NDLEA. He said, what is being done to figure out the underlying issues that drive these youths or people in general to drug? And I think Dr. Umeh has done a very good job of doing that. He also has, are these underlying factors driving youths to drugs being addressed? And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. How do these youths get access to these drugs? Wow, that's a good question. And I think, is there age limit to alcohol? I think that question is for Mr. Babafemi, if you don't mind. How do these youths get access to the drugs?
Quite a number of channels or platforms, virtually everybody already agreed here. When you look at some of the predisposing factors, when, for instance, from the home, they see their parents doing this, when their parents have to send them to buy some of these drinks for them, no matter how young or how little these kids are, they sit in the corner of the home watching their parents consume these things. From there, they start assumption. Okay, for my parent, for my mom or my dad to enjoy this, that means there is something in them. And when the parents are done, these kids are invited to come and pack the bottles. And from that moment, they also have the temptation to start experimenting, to start tasting. And that's That first point, for instance, those that are home when, those whose parents take these things, that's their first point of contact. But beyond that, we also know that, again, from our operations, from our work, we also understand the fact that these drugs are available online, on the dark web. These kids also, especially because, when you talk of Gen Z, the internet children, they have access to the internet and they know how to go about these things on the dark web or the internet. So they have access to this on the internet. Beyond that, again, they go out to mix with some other kids, some friends. That's when they start mixing with the wrong set of people who already know what you call the plugs. That is, it's almost natural in drug users that even if a drug user gets to a new environment, there is that tendency that he will be able to figure out where drugs are sold or are available in the new environment. There is something within, in them that gives them that kind of direction. But then basically through their friends, through their associations from outside the home, but in the house, again, for those whose parents consume, they have that contact. But mostly, majority of them, these things, like I said before, we tried to ensure that we cut supply and access to these things. That's why we keep seizing every day. Every day we, seize these things in their hundreds, in their thousands and millions. But then, beyond what you can see in the physical, they have a lot of transactions globally. Not even, this is not limited to Nigeria. Globally, we have a lot of transactions, drug transactions going on in the dark web, where these people have access through their, by virtue of their age, by virtue of their exposure, and by virtue of their association.
So why is let me not be judgmental here. Is the NDLEA aware of the dark web? Do you embed yourself in it?
Absolutely. If you follow us, you also know that we made quite a lot of arrests in that area. And without coming out to say some of these, some of the things we do, some of our operations in that area, we also track. We also embed ourselves in there. We also track, and that's why, again, you will see consignments moving from one location to the other. And at a particular point in the movement or in the operation, we track and we get these things. So they are not things, we are not spirits to know where, to be where they were at the point of movement or relocating those things. All of these things are tracked either online or through some other channels.
And one of the strategies that I know that, for instance, the United States government, drug enforcement agency uses is to target the big ones. And we've seen it in so many movies, like the Black, Mafia of Black, or whatever it is, so some other movies. And Dr. Shadare said it's big business. People are making billions of dollars. Some of them are big people in the society. Why haven't we had any high-profile arrests of the big guys?
No, I'm sure if you also follow us with that, you will know that more than ever before. Just a few months ago, the biggest consignment of cocaine ever in the history of Nigeria was made by the NDLEA in a location in Ikorodu. That's over 2 tons, 2,135 kilograms. That's a consignment worth millions of dollars seized. And I can also tell you that all of this we're doing, and we've also had, I'm also aware, even those who are in this law enforcement circle, we've made big arrests there. They are in prison as we speak, and they are facing a trial from prison. We've also had, billionaires who, those who are involved in bringing in opioids, like Dr. Umeh said. Those the brains behind the biggest imports of opioids into Nigeria, those who could afford to bring in tramadol, over 20 billion. We've arrested them. I mean, through and there are people facing trial. I can go. We have more than 40 of them as we speak. I have their names on my system. It's just that there are people that are already going, trial, so we may not be able to be listing, putting names there. And as we speak, as we are right here today, an operation is going on in Lagos where we've also intercepted another consignment of tramadol in Festac area of Lagos, again worth billions. So all of these are people. You see, unfortunately, maybe we look at politicians. No, there are more people in this outside politics. There are people whose only business is this drug, because they make a lot of money there. And like Dr. Umeh said, globally, it's a money business. So
Dr. Shadare said that.
Okay, Dr. Shadare said, okay. Now, people are desperate and they can do anything to get into this and to do it. But then I'll tell you that indeed they are not finding it funny. I'm in a position to let you know that indeed they are not finding it funny, because we're not just only going after them, we're making sure that we blocking their channels, seizing these things, and also going after the assets they have acquired through this criminal trade. Because one of the things is some of them can afford to go to prison and spend 5 years, 10 years in prison, as long as the assets, their money, the funds in their accounts, the properties they have acquired are intact out there. And so that is why we have also devised the means not only to limit our operations to arresting them, to seizing these illicit drugs, but also going after all the assets they have acquired. We have a full directorate in charge of that. That's Assets and Financial Investigation, where we trace and track all their assets wherever they are located, whether within or outside in other jurisdictions. Make sure we seize all of this to also make the impact, the effect, the deterrence, for them to feel this deterrence much more. That we're doing, that I can tell you.
Thank you very much. We're very glad that the NDLEA is doing so much. We probably just don't hear that much about what you're doing. But this is gladdening.
I'll be glad if you follow us on social media or go on our website.
We'll do that, and we're going to, after the talk, we're going to start campaigning as well. We will probably reach out to you to get loads and loads of information for that. I'll move on, and this time around, I'm going to Dr. Shadare. For those who are already touched by drug abuse, where do they and their families go? What is there in the society to help them? How do they help themselves? And how does society help them? Dr. Shadare.
Well, that's a very good question. Where did they go? First and foremost, I think despite all the problems that bedevil our country, I think one of the things you can see for Nigeria, and I'm speaking as someone who has lived in many other countries and I've seen the different ways of life. I think one of the things that's going for Nigeria presently is actually the fact that we still have very strong traditional institution, families, moral codes, strong moral codes, strong values. The values are still there. And, particularly in the Southwest, where incidentally we have a higher incidence of drug abuse than other parts of the country. I think part of the things that has kept or that has helped those who have, fallen into this behavior or this pattern is the fact that many of them can be helped through family, through extended family networks, through even religious institutions that are aligned one way or the other to the family network. And there are also other informal ways of support. We have many NGOs currently, working, civil society organization, let me use that word, who are currently working with, many faith institutions like churches, mosques, and what have you. And also we have, even the government is paying strong attention. And I'm glad that, we have an NDLEA top official in our midst. And some of the things he said, many of us actually, personally, I didn't even know. Although I read about what he said about the arrest. So it's good that, but I think what is lacking Yes, we have all those informal means of support. I think what we need to focus on and what is lacking is institutionalized support, which can come in many ways. It can come through social services, it can come through the mental health, when we have a strong mental health system. I don't know how robust or how resilient our mental health system is to accommodate the high incidences, the spike in the number of drug abusers that we have in Nigeria at the moment. So we need to have a very strong, institutionalized system that is anchored in mental health, and also to have a systematic way of actually, amplifying the significance and the availability of the support that mental health can offer. I think there's not enough noise made to amplify the importance of mental health. And this is due to what Folaranmi mentioned earlier, or somebody mentioned it. It's due to the stigma problem, the stigma factor. There's still a lot of stigma associated with with being an ex-drug user or being someone who has suffered addiction or dependence or whatever. So we need to confront that, and this is something that happens even in advanced capitalist societies as well. Stigma, so stigma is inhibiting, preventing a lot of people from seeking support. So this is also why, in addition to having a strong institutionalized, structured state provider of social service and mental health, we need to have all the other informal institutions working together with government, with this, system, formal, means of support, so that everybody all putting hands on deck, working together, they can actually help people. The job of rescuing mental health addicts or sufferers or victims, whatever you call them, because they are not just dependent. Some of them are addicts, some of them are victims, some of them are sufferers, or people who fell by the wayside, who became destitute and therefore had to embrace mental health as a way of coping, with their destitution or their economic problem, one way or the other. So you need to understand that there are different ways to categorize people who experience mental health or who are victims of mental health. So, so in addition to, we need to understand that helping them is a joint, communal, concerted, it would require a concerted approach that everybody.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shadare.
And just before I finish, the reason why that is important is when we understand the effect it has on the economy as well. So it has very strong, serious economic consequence, and it is only by working together that we can stem that problem. So let me just stop there. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Shadare. And the point you are trying to make there, if I got you right, is that this is going to be solved through concerted effort. Institutions, informal organizations, everybody working together. It's everybody's problem. We have to solve it all together. I go now to Mr. Folaranmi. Knowing from your experience, you've been on the streets, you know the institutions, you know the system. From your experience, and knowing that drug addiction is tough to deal with, both from the family and social perspective, what must be done across Nigeria? Just like a follow-up to what we just learned from Dr. Shadare, what must be done across Nigeria to bring this problem under control?
First of all, like the previous speaker has just said, we need to look into stigma reduction. It's very important. All hands need to be on deck. We need to understand, first of all, that someone who is struggling with an addiction is struggling with a disease. Addiction is actually a mental health illness, characterized by the compulsive need to engage in the behavior of continuous substance, irrespective of its harmful consequences. So when we understand that someone who is struggling with this, we look at the person with empathy, it makes it easier for others who have this challenge to come out. So now that's on that angle. The second angle, which I'm very big on, is prevention. Prevention again, because it takes probably 1/10 of the energy you put into treatment, you put into prevention, and it will give you a bigger result. I used to tell people that if there was ever a time that the saying prevention is better than cure is true if in the situation of drug abuse and addiction. It's better we actually go through prevention techniques, evidence-based prevention methods. At the family level, parents that are listening to us on this platform, people who are going to go to their offices tomorrow and talk to other people about what you've heard today, our parents need to be aware of the fact that drug use exists in our society. I struggled with addiction for 7 years. I was addicted to crack cocaine. And you know the funny thing, I came to my parents and said, Dad, Mom, I have a problem with addiction. And my father didn't believe me. Why? Because he said there was no cocaine in Nigeria. So you can imagine, you know, a lot of parents are so oblivious to the fact that these things are happening. We need to be more aware. So it starts from the family. Then, like I said, at the school level, the community level, one of our speakers said something very important. At the religious level, religious centers, there's a big role we play because Nigeria is a religious country. Be you Muslim, be you Christian, be you traditional worshiper, we all believe, well, not all of us, the majority of us believe in the existence of a higher authority. And then we all run to our pastors, our imams, our alphas, somebody who we can communicate our problems to. I'll talk again about a bit about my story. When I was struggling with drug use, I ran to my pastor. My pastor I love so much. Pastor's one of the biggest churches in Abuja. I said, sir, I have a drug problem. He was absolutely clueless on what to do. You know what he did? Because of how tattered and how battered and how terrible I looked, I didn't have shoes on my feet. My clothes were dirty. My hair was unkempt because it had grown for 3 months because I was living in a trap house. He gave me money. He gave me money. He said, go and buy clothes, buy a phone, buy some shoes, and come back for counseling. I mean, who does that? Who gives an addict money? So he was oblivious. He didn't do what should have been done then because he didn't know what to do. So at our religious center level, there's a lot that can be done in helping to prevent drug use. We need to even put this in our sermons. We need to add it into our sermons. Let's let people know that these things exist and talk to your congregation, be it church, be it Muslim, at the mosque. Talk to people about these things. Let them know it exists and let them know that it can be prevented. And of course, at the community level too, we need to all put hands together. They say it takes a village to raise a child. When you see something that is going wrong, please do something. It takes all hands to be on deck to prevent drug use in our society. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. When you see something that is going wrong, you do something. I would move on to Dr. Umeh. Dr. Umeh, as someone who works on the medical side of things, as someone who treats patients who are dealing with this problem, how prepared is the Nigerian medical system? Do we have enough resources? Do we have enough training? What are you seeing? What are you seeing?
That's a very big question. And I'm going to answer it based on the practical reality of our time. I hope you know that substance use management is one of the most difficult things to deal with. And the reason is not far-fetched. The relapse rate is very high. Now, I'm going to give you a picture of what the drug management is and how prepared we are in Nigeria to deal with that. Now, we have various levels of intervention. First, we have the ones that are motivated to use the drugs. They have not started using it. At that level, you need to psychoeducate them to drop that idea. Now, we have the ones that have started using, but they have not graduated to addiction level. Those ones will require intervention. And then we have the ones that are already addicted. And those ones will require hospitalization. Then we have the ones that, apart from addiction, have also psychotic illness associated with it. Because some of these drugs, at certain level, can lead to psychotic illnesses. So you could see the various levels. Now, what do we do?
Let me stop you for a minute because some of us are not that knowledgeable. What's a psychotic illness?
Okay, people that have lost touch with reality.
Okay, got it.
They hear voices when nobody is talking to them. They believe things that are not in keeping with their culture. They go about unkempt. and do things that others might consider to be bizarre. Those are the signs.
Some of them, like with the people in Yoruba land, we call them weary. They're on the streets.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So, and we usually differentiate those ones that those ones who already have psychotic illness. This one is drug induced. So for those ones, if you take them to the hospital, they are managed, they recover. But each time they smoke or use the drug, they go back again. The symptoms will reoccur. So to those category of persons, total abstinence if they want to function again. Now, do we have facilities for this? And that is where the interventions come in. First, for those ones that have withdrawal syndrome, you admit them in the hospital for detoxification so that you clear the active substances in their system. Then that is the first phase. The next one is rehabilitation and reintegration. You have to let them function, go back to the original functional state before they started using drugs. We don't have such facilities in the country. Now, the private ones that are springing up are too expensive for the common man to access. Now, let's look at distribution of federal neuropsychiatric hospitals in the whole nation. And then you can get one across the 6 geopolitical zones. Now, consider that number to the rising number of drug cases in the country. What can they do? Now, the teaching hospitals just have miniature psychiatry departments. Okay, they are not established to handle long stay patients, and most drug care cases are long stay. And that's why when you take them to such facilities, they recover. They go back 2 months, they are back. Because once they are supposed to be discharged from such hospitals to the rehab home, where they are going to be managed and now reintegrated into the society so that they become functional again. We don't have such facilities. Even though we might have the personnel, but you know, like the earlier speaker talked about, any drug issue, stigma. Now, in some cases, we have cases in the world that we're looking for people that can sponsor them. Why they are sponsoring other persons, since they are mental health cases, nobody wants to sponsor because they believe that it doesn't matter what you do to them, they can never get well. These are some of the things that are affecting this aspect of intervention. The other one is this: how many persons are going into the mental health space in Nigeria? How many doctors want to become psychiatrists? Because they don't think that it's a gold mine. Nobody wants to go there. So the few ones we have, like this Japan syndrome, are sending them away. That means starving us of more personnel. How many clinical psychologists do we have in the country? Go and check the WHO data. We're still far, far behind this back there. So what are we doing? The Dr. Shadare was talking about, some other person was talking about institutional support. I hope you know that before now, the mental health bill we were using was the Lunacy Act of the 1950s that criminalizes suicide. Now, until recently, when the mental health bill was passed with a lot of lacuna. So these are the things. If we have such framework, if we have such directions that will permit people to treat people with mental health issues as other persons, then we can start talking about intervention. Then it can start talking about establishing halfway homes, establishing rehab centers that are rehab centers for what they are, not a business venture. These are the problems we are currently having. And I can tell you that there is nothing on ground that will support the fact that we can deal with impact of mental health issues associated with drug in the country presently. It is that bad.
Yeah, it's sad. And that's a food for thought for all of us, because we believe in Rescue Nigeria that we are the ones, the citizens, who will change things. We can't just leave things to the government. But that's really, that's sober. I'm sobered by that reality, which I knew to be the truth, but hearing from your mouth kind of drives the point home. Now, we are going to be wrapping up now in this People's Parliament. We want to go back to the attendees. We want people to ask questions. If you have a question or if you have a comment, again, let me remind you, keep it short and sweet.
I've listened to most of the speakers, so it's like the public, the poor people access drugs, like I follow the trend of NDLEA. So they arrest this drug, these people using substance and treat them like criminals. But one thing that I've noticed that is not being done is to ask the fundamental question. How are these people accessing these drugs? We know very well that during election, for instance, you see talks, running around. These people, they don't just do these things with clear mindset. They do these crazy things after they have ingested a series of drugs. Most of the people that do the ballot snatching or do all manner of things, they actually influenced by this substance. So that is why I said part of the issue of drug abuse is that these things have been influenced politically. There are some political actors that are on the ground doing these things. Even on a broader scale, when you hear NDLEA saying, oh, we have arrested this, we have arrested that, and you look at the individuals they've arrested, these are people that do not actually have the money to buy some of these drugs because these drugs might be very, very expensive, right? But who are those funding these drugs for us, for the poor people on the street to have?
Please wrap up, Victor, wrap up quickly.
Yeah, so I've already asked the questions. I'm saying that there are political actors on the ground, ensuring that these drugs are very are out there on the street.
Okay, we'll take that. Thank you very much for your comments and your question. I will pass that over to Mr. Babafemi to address.
There is a misconception in the question that NDLEA arrest drug users. I don't think Victor has been following our activities, even though as of today, the law in Nigeria does not punishes possession. That is, when you are caught with drugs, no matter how little it is a criminal offense. That one can go to jail for between 15 to 25 years. But then if he's been following our activities, you will discover that indeed, in line with best global practices, what we have done rather is to assess the individual and see whether this person is actually using or dealing. When the person is using and we know the person actually needs help rather than being prosecuted, what we do is to put the person on treatment, on counseling and treatment, rather than being prosecuted and sent to jail. Those that we actually put out there for prosecution are those that are actually involved in dealing, trafficking. Those are the real criminals. So that's for that. And for the political angle he refers to, I also think this is not just about, we just talked about the summary of all we have spoken about. Dr. Shadare, Dr. Umeh, has to do with a whole society approach. This is not just about the NDLEA alone. This is a collective thing. It's about all of us. So NDLEA cannot be everywhere. I do know that indeed during elections, we all go out to ensure that we cut access, we make sure we mop up whatever is available on the streets and all of those things. Just like these actors also procure arms, ammunition to arm their supporters and all of them, we do understand the fact that indeed drug plays a major role. And that's why During election cycle, we do all that we can to ensure that we block access and availability of this thing. But then it goes beyond an agency of government. It's about all of us. What do we do in our own little corner, in our homes, in our streets, in our communities? What do we contribute? How do we check the activities of these people? So we should try to not shift responsibility when it comes to finding solutions to Nigeria's problem. It should be a collective thing. That is why we adopt a whole society approach to solving this problem, because starting from the family, like I said, faith-based organizations, community-based organizations, traditional institutions, all of us collectively, we must all get involved. We must all take ownership of the fight against substance abuse. That is the way to go.
Thank you. It's a collective. We all have to work together. You said there, Mr. Babafemi. There is a question there from Dr. Idi-Araba, and the question would, if the question can be answered by Mr. Folaranmi, that would be great. And the question is this: for the youth still in school, is there mandated education programs in place in our secondary schools to address drugs and impact on the body and brain? Mr. Folaranmi, are there any programs at all in schools that you're aware of?
Okay, I think if I heard that question well, you said for the youth still in school, are there mandated drug abuse educations in schools? Is that what the question is?
Yes, that's what it is.
Well, we don't have that at all levels of schools, all the levels of the school system. For instance, here in the state where I am, we have certain schools that even have, like I think one of the speakers talked about when talking about mental health and saying that it has to be inculcated in a school system. So we have in some schools that, yes, you go to those schools and they tell you that they already have a drug abuse education practice in their school system. But I don't think we have it across board. So it's something that I think needs to be inculcated in our curriculum for the school system and done properly so.
Thank you. So we don't have it, but we should have it. I think we should be getting to the end of this very interesting discussion on the drug menace. And in order to do that, what we're going to do now is to go around our panelists. What are your parting thoughts after today's session? What could be anything? What problems are there that need to be addressed that have not been addressed? What does the future look like for you? What should we be doing? So what are your parting thoughts? And I will start that from Dr. Umeh.
Thank you very much once more for inviting me to talk now. Like I said earlier, the drug is eating deep into our societies. Sometime in the 80s or 90s, they said Nigeria was only a career state. Nigeria is now using drugs. It doesn't matter how we deny it. I'll give you an example. If you live in Lagos and walk through any street, you will perceive the smell of cannabis. And it's becoming very common. I happen to work with some university students. Out of every 100 I screened for drugs, 90 of them were positive for one or two substances. It is becoming a problem. Let us stop acting like the giraffe, like the ostrich that will hide his head and expose the body. If we keep pursuing the big shots, let us begin with the small shots. And beginning with the small shots simply means let the family wake up to their primary responsibility. Let the schools be alive to this task. One of my PhD students was working on psychiatric substances, and he picked a lot of them in primary and secondary school. Could you imagine an 8-year-old girl selling tramadol? Now, and you are saying we're not using. No. It's the time now for us to begin to act and have an action plan to start dealing with it. And my solution is simple. Drug education is a necessity now. Let's start from primary school. Because what I discovered over time is that most of them don't even know the impact of this drug in their system before they start using. And some of them say they were pressured to use. And that is where self-esteem, and that is where the family. Self-esteem is developed from the family. If you teach your child to be confident, that person that is encouraging him to use the drug, that person will discourage the person to stop using. And that is where our work begins, prevention. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We must wake up, you said. It's time to wake up, everybody. I will now go to Dr. Shadare.
My parting thoughts, number one, I think we need to galvanize the conscience of Nigerians at all levels, across all strata, to the insidious, pernicious, side effects of drug and the extensive damage it can cause to the economy. So, and I think one of the ways we can do that is to start a very coordinated, like Femi said, Mr. Babafemi said, talking about the whole society approach. I think I like, getting everybody on board and actually begin a serious campaign, on social media, on, getting all stakeholders involved to the dangers of crime. I think when there's enough education to galvanize people, when there is enough information out there, really we're in an age where there is this pervasive use of social media. And we also know that celebrities have a role to play in this as well, because a lot of them glorify, this kind of lifestyle as well, which is helping to fuel, the practice. So we need to use that method to counteract that. I think, and then going back to schools as well, because this is cascaded down to like secondary school levels, even primary school levels. So when we do that, then we can begin the work of rejuvenating our societal values, rejuvenating our systems, and then maybe building structures that can help to strengthen, our fight, our collective fight against this pandemic, this menace. So that's what my parting thoughts would be.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shadare. Mr. Folaranmi, your parting thoughts.
Number one, we must go back to the family. It's very important. I've buttressed this from the very start when I was given an opportunity to speak. If we get it right at the family unit, then it's going to reduce the task for everybody else in terms of drug abuse prevention. Number two, we need to carry out drug abuse prevention practices that are in line with evidence-based practices. Let's not do things that are counterproductive. So we should get educated, we should get informed. Even us that are trying to create this prevention, we must make sure we do it rightly. For instance, scare tactics, we all know that does not work. One-line mantras of saying, say no to drug abuse. You go to a school and you raise placard and say no to drug abuse and you go. It doesn't work. So let's carry out our practices that are in line with evidence-based methods. And number three, and my final thought is, if you're already in it, it's not a death sentence. Anybody struggling with drug use, I'm talking to you now. You're struggling with drug use, it's not a death sentence. You can come out of it. People have come out of it and are doing very well now. Please seek professional help. Talk to Dr. Umeh, talk to any of our professionals that are here, and you'll be able to come out of it. It's not a death sentence. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's not a death sentence. And to bring us home, Mr. Babafemi.
I can see some questions on the platform already. Nigeria, and indeed through the agency today, has what you call National Drug Control Master Plan 2021 to 2025. And again, the agency also has an advocacy initiative called War Against Drug Abuse, WADA. So all of this provides platforms for Nigerians, for anybody who wants to get involved in this to actually get involved. They are all platforms for anybody who wants to get involved to please get involved. That's just as a way of answering some questions online. Then two, there is no way we can run away from the issue of prevention. If today we are more than 200 million people, and we say about 15 million people are abusing illicit substances, what happened to the 185? So that means we still have the majority who are not. So we need to target those ones to ensure that indeed we don't have them fall into that particular gap. And that is why We're driving, we're getting everybody to get involved in the advocacy, in the education, in the enlightenment on dangers of abusing illicit substances. And my final, again, for those who are scared because the issue of stigmatization has been raised there, the agency also has a drug abuse call center with a toll-free helpline that anybody who is afraid of stigmatization can call from the comfort of their homes. The number is 0800-102-03040. Anybody can call this. We have psychiatry doctors, counselors, psychotherapists, psychologists, clinical psychologists, all of them run shift 24/7 there. All these are available for Nigerians that need help and probably are scared of stigmatization. There, nobody needs to know you. You are not, they don't know who you are. And finally, the issue of the family, intentional parenting. Parents need to start being parents. When we were growing up, our parents are actually intentional. And so the parents of these days need to be intentional. That's the only way we can get to solve this issue from the family level. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Parents need to be intentional. I'll quickly just recognize some of the questions. Mr. Babatunde Madeni, you said, let's talk more about solutions. I think we've done that. Let's start from junior secondary schools up to universities. Well, I think the people who need to hear are listening, and definitely they are also going back to the organizations with certain things that they can also learn from our discussions here today. There is someone, MK's iPhone, that's all we see. I think your question has been addressed by Mr. Babafemi, and NDLEA needs to galvanize stakeholders to run a sustained public enlightenment campaign across schools and universities nationwide against drug abuse. Victor Wole, I hope that I haven't massacred your last name. Mental health education is necessary to enlighten all primary and secondary schools. I think we can all agree on this. We can never do enough of education. And after the talk today, the next phase for us at Rescue Nigeria is to start a campaign. We hope everyone will join us. We hope everyone will participate. We hope we can play our own part. We can play our role in the society to first let people know that we have a problem, and also let people know that all hope is not lost. We can deal with this. We can solve this. We can work on this together. I would like to send a note of appreciation to all of our panelists today, Mr. Babafemi of the NDLEA, Dr. Umeh of the Lagos Teaching Hospital, Mr. Folaranmi, who is an advocate for those people suffering from drug abuse, and also Dr. Shadare, a lecturer at a university in the UK. We are very grateful. You gave us all this time, and we do not even pay for it. You gave it as a public service. We want people to know that you donated your time and you donated your resources for the sake and for the benefit of the society. We are very appreciative. Thank you very much. And everyone who has stayed through this, we want to say we also appreciate you. We thank you. There is going to be a lot more about this in this event. There will be press statements, there will be videos, there will be clips, because we are intentional about going out and trying to make this issue one that will resonate throughout the society. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.